Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. John Bartz here with NCSI. Welcome to December's Grub Club, where this month we're presenting the Ivanti Enterprise Service Manager. We have a new lunch delivery program. Instead of pizza, we're giving you the flexibility to order your meal. You should have received a welcome email from Grubhub and instructions from us on how to receive your lunch. If you have any issues, please email us during the webinar here, Alyssa A. Thompson at ncsi.us if you had any issues with that. But hopefully you enjoyed ordering your own meal. Let's go into the Studio 3B. Standing by are Brian Hodzik and Brian Hoskins. Hey, guys.
Good morning.
Morning, John.
Good morning. Just a reminder, we'll take Q&A throughout, so please ask questions either in the Q&A or in the chat area, and we'll be answering those throughout today's presentation. Let's go ahead and turn it over to Brian and Brian in Studio 3B.
All right, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're going to be covering Ivanti Enterprise Service Management today and going through quite a bit, but we're not going to be able to get to everything that's available within the platform, right? This is just a small set of the things that are available in the platform, but obviously the ones that people try to use the most. So I'm Brian Hoskins.
Hi, I'm Brian Hodzik.
So we're going to be kind of going through a couple of different things as we work with this today. We're going to be going through incident, problem, change, request, some of those different components. Mr. Hodzik's going to be showing you self-service and all the different components associated with that. And we're just going to touch on asset management as it exists in the platform today. And we're going to touch on how we can extend the platform beyond just IT service management and move into enterprise service management. And show you some of the great new features that were released even just last week in the platform. So let's go ahead and get started.
All right, thanks, everyone. So I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A and chat, so please ask questions as we go along and we can answer them real time.
Okay, so I have a couple of different laptops here, a couple of different stations to play a couple of different roles as we go through this. The first one that I have over here is going to be playing the role of our CIO. And this will be mostly for reporting and our extraction UI that we'll be showing you really quickly to be able to go ahead and pull that data out of the platform. Then we've got our admin account that's going to be doing a lot of the demo configuration, different things associated with that. And then more of our frontline technician interface as well. And then a mobile interface that we'll be showing from up here at the news desk. And then we also have over here our self-service that Mr. Hodzik will be showing you here in a little bit. So let's go ahead and jump in. Again, if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A and we'll be monitoring those and we'll take pause time for questions and answers. So from this, you'll see here, I'm in extraction. This is our business intelligence reporting tool against all of the Ivanti platform. It happened to grow up as an ITSM business intelligence platform, so it's very good at reporting against that different components. You see I've got it cycling through a couple of different dashboards here to be able to kind of go through and show some different data along those lines, and you'll see the countdown as it goes through to the next one. I'm going to turn that off because I don't want to spend a ton of time in extraction to kind of go through that. We could spend, you know, hours and hours here to be able to go through and show data, but we'll just start with a quick intro here and then kind of move from that. You'll notice any one of these things, I can drill down to the records that sit behind those. 216 records within this dashboard around incidents by the desktop service. I've got incidents by category, incidents by source, incidents by location, and by department. I can use this data to also filter other components. So if I wanted to see only those incidents in the West Coast location, I can go through and do that. Now it will show me services, categories, sources, and departments where we're in the West Coast location. If I wanted to also add the marketing department to that, I can go ahead and do that. And now you'll see those numbers will change. And rather than, you know, the 216, now we're looking at 8 records associated with that. So we can go through and kind of work from those different components on here. You'll also notice as we kind of go through from this perspective up here, I can schedule this dashboard or report to show up in my inbox or drop it on the network somewhere in some kind of interval and in a format that we choose to be able to go through and do that. So I can select, you know, daily, weekly, monthly schedule where I want to have that dropped in, you know, and as kind of an example, here's my email for this this user, and you would be able to see he can open up that report that was emailed to him on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, be able to see the data behind that. You can also go through, if you want to, and just do a real-time export of that data. And I can come down here, say, I want to go do a report out. I got to go through and I will have it create the PowerPoint for me along those lines. So it will take a slide and create a slide for each one of these dashboard gadgets that are here along those lines, right? Now, the beauty of extraction really is not that it can create these nice looking reports and create PowerPoints and all that kind of stuff. The beauty of extraction is how easy it is for somebody who's not a report designer or a SQL guru to be able to build these kind of things, right? So I'm going to go through and just very quickly create a dashboard with a few different components on it. We're going to go incident management, and we're going to go everything for the last 12 months along those lines. We're going to give ourselves one more bit of real estate in our dashboard so that we can go through and do that. And let's just grab a couple of things. Let's go through and select incidents by month over the last 12 months. Let's look at a donut for the customers who called in. Let's look at it by also, oops, I missed getting that all the way over there. Let's get customer department all the way over there. And then the last one I want to show is a pivot chart of time to resolve by team member, right? So as we come in here and say, how quickly are we resolving the incidents? And we want to look at that by the owner along those lines. So I just went through and created a real quick dashboard along those lines. There's a couple things I would probably do to clean that up. Like, for instance, other is not really helpful when I'm showing the user count, right? So maybe I want to get rid of that other into that perspective. Maybe I want to reformat the way that the time to resolve is working. I could do that as well. But just a quick view of extraction as we're kind of working through from that perspective.
Hey, Brian, we have some questions here.
Yeah.
Do I have to use extraction? What if I have something like Power BI?
No, we have lots of customers using Power BI, Tableau. We connect it. So either if you're on-prem with this platform, you can connect it obviously to that database. Or if you're in the cloud, can get you what's called a BI reporting tenant. That would be a read-only production copy of your database essentially. And then you would be able to report against that. Okay. So you'll notice from this one, I'm logged in up here. I have a couple of different tenants running, and we'll talk about different things in here. But just really quickly, from a service management only to a service and asset management platform to an enterprise service management platform, meaning this platform is going to have things like facilities, security operations, HR roles, all of those kind of things along these lines. So we have several different tenants that we can go through and show you the different pieces of, depending on where you want to take the platform. It's all one platform, but we can have things turned on and off as we want to based upon that. You'll notice I'm currently logged in as the NCSI admin. My role is administrator. Everything in here is role-based, right? So as an administrator, I'm going to have access to all the different parts of the platform and everything that I can go through and do that. But if I were to say change my role over to a service desk manager role, right, you will notice that my home dashboard will change. My access to different things will change. My dashboards, everything else will change based upon that role, right? And you see here, if I come over here to the much more restricted access to the different components, as well as here's my workload by the team member, and I can come through and look at each team member and what's their workload, and I can drill into any one of those and start to see if I need to do some redistribution, where are things happening, and all of that kind of stuff. As a manager, I want to be able to see that. You'll also notice as a manager, I want to see how my service levels are trending. Or I want to go through and see how our surveys are coming back from customers as we're kind of going through the different components along those lines. So you can see all of that structure associated with this, as that kind of manager role as we're going through. Then if I'm moving over here to an analyst role, so now you'll see I'm over here as an analyst. My home screen as an analyst isn't going to be these nice dashboards and charts and different things along those lines. It's going to be really, what are my assigned tasks? What are my active incidents? What are my team's incidents breaching soon that I might need to help with? All of those kind of things would be right on my home dashboard that I would be able to come through and look at. And then you'll also notice right up here, I have this little bubble. This is to indicate my availability for chat support, right? So if I were to go ahead and turn this on and say, yes, I want to turn on chat support, that means that I'm now available to support chat requests coming in through the self-service. We're not going to do that today just because we don't have enough time to get through everything that we want to do, but we can certainly do that for anyone who would like to see a more customized demo for your organization. We can do that at that point, right? So as we kind of come through, you'll notice we have the different ITIL modules, or what we call workspaces, listed up here along the top. You'll see, for an example, incident management, or if I wanted to look at service requests, any of those kind of things, they would all be the different modules or workspaces that we have. Every one of our workspaces is going to follow the exact same look and feel. We're going to have a search up here along the top. We're going to have a results in the middle, and we're going to have a preview down here along the bottom. All right, so our search allows us to go through and have any favorite saved searches that we can go through and do. So if I wanted to look, show me my active incidents, I could quickly go through and grab that. Or if I wanted to go through and show any of my team's incidents resolved on the first call, I could quickly grab those kind of searches along those lines as we're in there. You'll also notice over here on the far right, we have a ability to come in here to free text search. Show me everything that Brian has submitted into the system, or show me everything that had Brian and the keyword of Outlook. And I would be able to go through and see each one of those different components in there. You'll also notice each one of these different columns will have the ability for us to come in and do filters and searching and different pieces against the column sets in and of themselves if we wanted to do that. But we can also come here and take this quick filters list. So here you can see we can do a quick saved search by coming here and say, hey, I'm looking at all incidents as my search. So I can come in here and say, show me everything that's logged and active, that's a priority 3 and 4, that's assigned to my team, where the user is a VIP, and let's say the service that they're calling about is the desktop service, right? Now we've gotten that all the way down to 2 records essentially that are on here. And if I even wanted to go through and say, let's filter that down to only those that are in Canada, now you see from that perspective, there was only 1 record. It automatically opened that record as we go through and look at that. Now, once I have this filter list, I could go ahead and save this as a saved search so I could grab it later. I can work through any of those kind of things. Obviously, you can also come in here and create new saved searches in a little bit more of a robust component, but the saved search component that we just showed you was very easy and quick to be able to go through and make those filters as we go in. All right, so Mr. Hodzik, are there any questions before we jump into our first incident?
No questions right now.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and create our first incident. Along this lines, again, we're an analyst at this point, so we're in essence taking a phone call, filling this kind of information in. So we're going to say that Marcia is calling. You'll notice we're going to key pieces of information about Marcia when we select her employee record. This is going to come from something like an Active Directory or a Workday or some HR database, any of that kind of stuff that we can go through and populate that user list. We're going to see key pieces here, but we can also go to that full employee record where we would be able to see, Marcia's full details, organizational information, manager, things along those lines, as well as Marcia's incident history, Marcia's assets within the platform. I would be able to see all of that kind of stuff as we kind of work through those. You'll also notice it's set to active, meaning because I'm taking a phone call, I'm taking ownership of it. It's moving it straight to an active status rather than when an email comes in or through self-service, it would move it to a logged and assign it to a team kind of a structure along those lines. And you'll also notice right over here, we have our SLA response and resolution targets that we'll kind of highlight a little bit later as we go through. Let's say Marcia's calling in around a Windows profile error. And we can kind of start to see some of the details in here. You'll notice this is an HTML-enabled field. I can maximize that if I need to get more information, if I need to drag and drop, if I need to copy and paste. All of that would be supported within this HTML field that's here. I can select my service, my category, and different pieces along those lines. Let's go ahead and select that this is an application failure. You'll notice impact and urgency are all here. Those will default if I just go ahead and leave them there when I click save, and it will pop in those default values along those lines. You'll see I can also link in, the asset. So in this case, what if I wanted to show me only those assets that Marcia was the owner of? As I do a search, and I can go through, select that, do that search, and then it will filter it down to only those assets that are allocated to Marcia within the system. I can then link her computer onto that. I could find key pieces of information about that computer, if I wanted to look at that, or I can go through to that full CI record and kind of capture all of the detail I wanted to go through and look at that, which we'll show you here a little bit later. Right? Now you'll notice, as I was in that incident and typing all of that information in, it went out and searched a couple of things. It searched knowledge, it searched incident history, it searched problem management, and it searched change management along those lines. So if I were to see, hey, active changes that are going on, maybe that's causing this incident, so we can go and kind of see that value. We can see if this has happened in the past, and if it has happened in the past, we could resolve this new incident with the data from that old incident by clicking this little button here. If we have this as a systemic problem that we're fighting in our organization, and we have a problem identified and we're working through, you can actually see we have this example where we could link this incident as another instance, or if we have a resolution or a workaround configured or set for that problem, we would be able to go through and resolve this incident via those defined things. And then also, if we have a knowledge base article, right, we can have very rich knowledge articles within here with embedded videos, embedded images, different things along those lines. And you can even see links out to third-party tools, links out to your SharePoint or to your wikis. All of that kind of stuff can be pulled into this. And then I can even say something like link and resolve. It takes the information from that knowledge article, populates that resolution, moves the status to resolve, and even links that particular knowledge article to that. And if I were to look at that knowledge, we would be able to kind of see, here's all of the incidents that that knowledge article has been linked to and used to resolve in the past. So it would give us a lot of that good data along those lines. We go ahead and save this, and you'll notice in our details that Marcia's going to start getting emails, teams are going to start getting emails, all the different components associated with that as we send that out. Okay. Quick pause just to see if there's anything in the Q&A at this point.
Yeah, we got a question here. Can you change that incident form, the look and feel?
Yeah, you can absolutely change that. What is it, any way that you want to go through and look at that form, you can build the different things. In fact, if I just quickly move over to a different tenant, this is a tenant that's not an out-of-the-box tenant. What I've been demoing to you to this point is an out-of-the-box tenant. And if I were to come look over here at my incident form associated with this and say, let's go click this new incident, you'll see a completely different look and feel around that incident form and the different configurations. So you have a lot of flexibility and freedom there.
Another question, where did you get that user data from? Where did Marcia come from?
Marcia's going to come from Active Directory or some other HR database, something along those lines. So we're going to go through and sync that information at some kind of interval. Okay. Let's go ahead and switch gears then, and we'll move over to our self-service portal. And Mr. Hodzik's going to show us how to submit some incidents along that line.
All right, so I'm going to be playing the part of our user today, kind of showing what it looks like from the user's perspective. So I'm logged in here as April. We're going to go through and submit tickets a bunch of different ways and do some different requests. You can see how the system interacts from a user perspective. So here is our self-service portal. Now, this can be customized. You can put your logo at the top. You can change your colors. You can even change some of the text here. One of my favorites is, don't call it IT support portal. You're going to see how this is truly an enterprise service management platform. I want to service more than just IT. I want to do facilities and HR and other things like that, that you can grow into. So very customizable. You can see we have some cool things like up here at the top. We have some announcements that we're making. Maybe there's an outage or there's some big change coming up that we want to tell our users about. We have the ability to make that kind of announcement. We have this Omni search box right here. This is great because users don't know what an incident means. They don't know incident or knowledge base, or that's all lost on them. But they do know search. So, if we go in here and just type Outlook, what's going to happen is it's going to search through all of the different components. It's going to look through frequently asked questions, through the Q&A, maybe an announcement that we'll have coming up. And you can see I can do things like this, click on an actual article, and it's going to take me to a knowledge base article. So here I have a knowledge base article. How do I create a PST? You can see I can do things like I can give it a rating. I can say whether it's helpful or not. I can have comments on it. All this stuff you can turn off if you don't like it, but out of the box, it's got some cool feedback from the users from that perspective. Here you can see a much more rich article that we're doing things like embedding a YouTube video in it, or attaching a Word document, or having other documents associated with it. So very easy to create these knowledge articles. You can create them by hand. You can have them created as, moving over from an incident. You can have them be presented just to the users, or only to the analysts. Maybe it's just a back-end thing. We only want our analysts to see. That's all within our control. We'd also do things like this. If I go and search for a standing desk. A standing desk is a request offering, but again, a user doesn't know what that means. So I'm going to be able to have a knowledge base article that links over to a request to have it go through that flow. So it actually moved from knowledge management to request management. The user didn't know. You just clicked on this, and all of that happened. So back here on our home portal, a couple of other things. We have direct access to our knowledge base. We have our My Items. Maybe I want to look at my outstanding incidents that I have. Excuse me. You can see I have apparently a lot of them outstanding, different requests and so forth. Additionally, we have some quick actions down here at the bottom, things like, commonly used information or commonly used knowledge base articles. Again, you get to customize this however you want to. Let's go through and look through our service catalog. So our service catalog is how we can do request offerings. Is one of my favorite parts of the puzzle. And that is being able to offer to our users the ability to request services. And those requests for services can be IT related, but they can also be, like, for example, facilities related. Let's look over here, and maybe it's moving office spaces, or heating and cooling problem, or maybe it's an HR related component, and I need to have, I'm hiring people, or something with my benefits. So lots of different things we can do in terms of offering our end users services that are not just IT related as well. So let's go through a couple of these requests and talk about them. Maybe I want something. I want a tablet. So I'm going to go through a tablet request right here. And it's going to ask me information around, what department is this for? Oh, it's for our facilities department. Who is the requester? Oh, it was Angela. It's going to automatically populate that information. Maybe we have a cost center, and I need to put in here that, it's the facilities cost center that we're going to charge against. You get to control this form. You don't have to ask any of these questions if you don't want to. If maybe we already know who the requester is because we're just going to take who's logged in, or we know what cost center is, or maybe you don't care about cost centers. All of these things are customizable to whatever you want in these request offerings. Down here at the bottom, what am I going to request? I'm going to request a Microsoft Surface. And which storage capacity do I want? I want the 64 gig version, and yes, I want a case associated with it. Over here, you can see by default, we have a shopping cart model that we're actually going to have a price associated with those. So this is cool because maybe you want to have it trigger. If it reaches a certain dollar threshold, maybe it needs to ask my manager for approval or something like that. We can create an estimate. So you as the administrator can say, hey, we think this is going to take 2 weeks and 6 days to fulfill. But then we actually are going to average out the real time as we fulfill these. In the real world, you're probably not going to fulfill it in 13 minutes. We kind of cheat here, and we're going to fulfill it really quickly. But this gives you actually how long it's going to take instead of just an estimate. So I'm going to go and review and submit that. It's going to put it in my shopping cart, and I'm going to submit that. And we're going to have our analysts deal with that later when they receive that request. So let's go back to our service catalog. What are some other cool things that we can do? Let's go through to an employee. A new employee onboarding is a huge part of a request offering. It's usually one of the first ones that we do for our customers. Why is that? Well, it's complex. There's multiple people that are involved in this process, especially with things like employee offboarding. We need to have an audit trail. When did they remove their account access? Did we get back their card and their equipment? These kinds of things oftentimes are lost in the weeds. And so this is something that's really ripe for the workflow engine to be created and followed. So let's go and hire someone. We're going to go through here and hire a gentleman named John Bartz. And we are going to make him in the executive department. He's going to be our new CFO. He's going to be, let's make him full-time. And we're going to start him tomorrow. So tomorrow is the 18th. So let's go pick the 18th. Wait a minute, I can't pick the 18th. Why can't I pick the 18th? Oh, look at this down here at the bottom. Minimum 2 weeks lead time is required. Don't you hate when they submit a request that, hey, by the way, someone's starting tomorrow? So this is an example of something called a field level constraint. We don't have to let them type in whatever they want. We can control that field and manipulate it so that they'll only type in what we want them to do. So in this case, I have to do it 2 weeks from now, which is on the 31st, to facilitate that. Down here, we're going to say where he's going to start. We're going to send him down under to our Sydney office. And we're going to put him in an office. And if we want to put the space location, or yes, he needs a computer. Notice that when I check that box, it's going to unlock some additional fields. You know, it's a desktop and notebook, an ultra portable port replicator. You know, remember, it's adding my shopping cart up here. Maybe he needs other things like a business card or corporate American Express. You can see I can create some boxes that are just free form. Maybe I want some of them to be rigid around the name or the start date, and I want to have extreme control over them. Other ones, we know that sometimes you just can't have that kind of control, and we need to have it to be a more open field, and they can type in whatever text they want to. So this is just an example to get the, kind of get the juices flowing, get you thinking about how this could potentially work. We always customize this for your entity and the way that your organization actually goes through its hiring process. So just kind of start thinking about how this could help with that a new employee onboarding. This could also be triggered automatically. Maybe you got something fancy like Workday or UltiPro. We can have it reach out to us via API. We don't even ask a human these questions. We get that information automatically from Workday and trigger this to all to happen without a human even being involved. That's my favorite, because then it takes away the human element that oftentimes causes errors and delays and things like that. Okay, let's hire John. Let's go send that over. We're going to submit that. He's going to pack his bags. We're going to submit that to the shopping cart. We're going to see what kind of the result is to that on the flip side when we go back over to Mr. Hoskins. Okay, so let's talk about submitting an incident. So I'm a user. I've done a couple of requests. I've looked in the knowledge base. Now I've got a problem. I can't print or whatever. How do I interact with the service desk? Well, email's the most common. So absolutely, we have email integration. Here I'm going to go in and put the ability for an email. I'm going to send an email to the help desk. I'm going to say my problem is incredibly descriptive. I'm going to give screenshots and error codes. No, I'm just kidding. I'm an end user. I'm going to be say it doesn't work. I'm going to say the thing doesn't work. That's how your emails are going to come across, right? So I'm going to send that off, and we're going to have him worry about that on the flip side. What's another way that we have users interact with our service desk? Well, that's over the phone. So we have something really cool called Ivanti Voice. So Ivanti Voice is going to sit in front of our help desk and interact with our users that way. So let's call into it and see what it can do.
Thank you for calling Bertrillo. Your call may be monitored or recorded for quality purposes. To speak to the IT service desk, please press 1. To speak to human resources.
Remember, it could be more than just IT. I could do payroll, HR, IT. Let's call IT.
Hello.
Brian.
Look, it even knew my name.
Thank you for calling the Bertrillo IT service desk. To reset your domain password, please press 1.
So notice we could do password resets. We could, go to hardware and software, maybe handled by different departments. We do skills-based routing, send out to the people that needed. If I would have went to the password reset, it could have maybe asked me, the last four of my social or some kind of employee code, and open and close the ticket and read back out to me what my password is. So if we also had some big problem, we had an outage of the WAN or the Exchange server was offline, well, we could have declared it as a master incident and announced it on the IVR, and it would have read that out to our users. So great little add-on. I wish everyone would do it via chat and self-service and email, but I know that still people pick up the phone, so we have a great solution for that. So that's kind of our end user's perspective. I'm going to flip it back over to Mr. Hoskins, and he's going to walk us through kind of receiving those requests and what he would do with them.
Okay, so we're going to walk through a couple of different things. The first thing we want to do is that tablet needs to have a manager approval, right? So within our platform, managers can approve to be able to go through and do that either from from an email. They can respond to the email. They can log into the portal. We also have an iOS and an Android app that would allow you to go through and have self-service and Analyst as a mobile view. So we can go over to the iPad here, and you can see I'm logged in as myself. Notice it's themed a little bit differently here. That's just configurable by you. But I'm going to go into my items here, and as we come in through and see that, you would be able to see here's my issues that I have. But also, if I go over here and select my approvals, I would be able to see any kind of approvals that are outstanding from this. We'll go ahead and see this one that was 6 minutes ago. Well, we'll go ahead and select that. and we would be able to see, here's that request for the facilities department charged to the facilities cost center. We can see price structure. We can see delivery information that would be there. And I can go ahead and approve that request directly from there. Again, that could also be done through email. You can also even have, we had a customer who, they didn't want to introduce another approval portal. So they had an approval portal that they used for everything, and they actually tied an integration between this and their approval portal so that it could all be triggered through API into the Ivanti platform itself. Now, if you were to also come through from this perspective, you would see here, I can switch over to my mobile analyst view. And as a mobile analyst, if I'm going to be out and about and I need to work on my incidents or the tasks or service requests that I have assigned to me, you would be able to see, I can see all of my incidents, my tasks. I could come through and configure any one of these different components. My service requests that are assigned to me, all of those would be here and available. I could walk through. You'll even notice I can come in here, create a new incident, create a new service request as I'm mobile and I'm working through all of the different components as we're viewing that, right? So apps for technicians, apps for the end user that they would be able to go through and use any of those kind of things along those lines. Okay, so we're going to move over to fulfilling these requests and working through some of these incidents. Before I do that, I'm just going to do a quick pause, see if there's any questions that have popped up.
No questions right now.
Okay, great. So as we come through from here, you'll see at this point, I'm over here as our admin again. We'll go through, and first thing I want to show, the incident that's going to come in. We're going to go to all incidents because that is going to be where that is. We'll do a quick sort by the different components, and you'll see that it doesn't work, sent in by Mr. Hodzik from his email. We can go through and start to see that. You'll notice we're going to get things like what's the response target and what's the resolution target and where we at against those SLAs. The information on here, well, we don't have enough information to be able to move this on. So probably the first thing I would do is take ownership of this, assign it to me. When I do that, we're going to have to give it some kind of category level at that point, and I can go ahead and save that and just get it started as we're going to work through the different pieces on there. But you'll then notice as I quickly view that, we'll now have met our response because we've taken some ownership along those lines. But we don't have enough information at this point to be able to fulfill this. So I might have to go in and send an email out to somebody to say, hey, can you give us more info, right? Then Mr. Hodzik would get that email. He could send us the response to that email. We could work through the different pieces along those lines on there. We could also, instead of just doing an email, we can actually set this on a waiting for customer status. This waiting for customer status would let us stop that SLA clock, kind of work through from that perspective. As I say that, it's going to ask for a message that we would send to the customer as well. So a couple of different ways that you can do this from here. All right, so as he then responds back to those emails, that information would populate into here, and maybe we could start to get that kind of information on this. Now, as you'll notice from this perspective, this little blue line is going to indicate an incident to which I'm the owner, in which the user has updated, or somebody other than myself, I should say, is updated it, in which I have not read. So if I were to come in here and see that, right, the email that would be coming through, you'll see it actually came in fairly, it's a couple messages back now, but we're having a backup error. Okay, so we can come through and look at that and say from this perspective, well, that backup error, we actually have a template for. We can apply a template to that, and you'll see it will change the summary, the description, the service, the category, but you'll also notice it will create a task for someone in IT to go restore that backup. That template just did all of those different components associated with that, and then I would be able to go ahead and save, and that task gets assigned out to the team, and they can go through and work on fulfilling that particular incident. Right. We also have, back on our service requests, look at a couple of those from this perspective. You'll see here is a tablet request. This tablet request was submitted by April with the facilities information. If I were to click over to the approval, I could see that it was approved. If I double click into that, it will actually show me who the vote approved it for, all of the different time that they approved it, all that information is there. So we know that approval detail. And then you'll see it's created a task for somebody to go through and configure that Surface tablet. I could go ahead and accept that. I could come in here, complete that, and say that it took us 65 minutes to go ahead and do that. You'll see as it puts that in, it's going to actually take and add a cost structure. So if you want to do tracking of time and tracking of costs associated with that, we can do that. Other than that, it's going to complete that task, and this status is going to move from active to fulfilled by us completing that individual task, and we've now delivered that. Now, to deliver that, what we would actually have to do is start bringing in some asset management pieces along those lines, right? And so we come in here, we would go to our stock room, we would find a particular asset, we would be able to then come through, barcode scan what we're doing along those lines. We would then be able to see that and be able to update that with the different components associated with that, and then deliver that to the user. I'm not going to go through and hand that right over there, but the barcode scanning is all part of our asset structure. We can manage all of the different components associated with that, so you can see that. And I'm going to show you here really quickly, back over here on our asset side. If I were to be a role of an asset manager or asset administrator or along those lines, we have the concept of a stock room. And that stock room is going to be able to tell us, say in our Denver stock room, need to remember which one it is. It is in the Denver inventory, that we have some assets, we have some consumables, we have some different things where we would be able to go through that, and we would be able to see inventory transactions of everything that comes in, everything that goes out, where it went, and all of the different components associated with that from here. We also have the concept of a product catalog. And the product catalog would allow us to come in here and say, here's our standards. Here's what we support in the organization. And I can come in here and look at this Microsoft Surface Pro, and I can see that we have 5 of them in our organization. We have 2 of them in stock in our Salt Lake City stock room, Salt Lake City inventory, where we'll be able to go through and see a lot of that data, and we can see where we can purchase it from, all from an approved vendor structure along those lines. So the asset management allows us to go into that. And if I were to even come through here and look at, say, let's grab Surface 1, and we'll go to that, we would be able to see all of the asset information around this. So not just the base information, like what hardware information do we have and the different pieces, but we're also going to see who it's assigned to, where it's being used, what's the use policies around it, when did we purchase it, what's the warranty information along those lines, even getting into things like what PO was it purchased on, what kind of ownership, what GL is it, what's the market value, what's the salvage value, any transactions that were against it, if we've had maintenance applied to that, all of that kind of stuff, extended warranties purchases. We can link all of that kind of information over into the asset. And I will just point out, not the point of today's demonstration, but we have a link straight over to the Ivanti Neuron platform, all around the self-healing and being able to go through and do additional discovery and all the different components around managing those devices, not just from what they are and what the asset is, but really managing software, patch management, all of that kind of stuff can be with those different components that are there. So from here, I also want to come back to this request and show you that new hire. That new hire, we're going to come through here and look, there's 4 tasks. One for configuring the phone, one configuring the computer, one for configuring workspace, one for configuring keycard access. Where did those tasks come from? Well, those came from the request offering, right? And the request offering is what goes into that catalog. So you'll see here, I have 4 pages of request offerings in the ITSM only platform. If I switch over to my enterprise service management platform that has facilities and HR and all of the other things, and I go to the request offerings, you'll notice we have 9 pages out of the box of request offerings, to get you started, get you help with what your catalog would look like as you're kind of moving through from there. But if we were to grab this new employee setup one that we have, here you can see the new employee setup with the base information to it. Here's the form that we went through and asked, things like what's the location they're going to be in? Do they need a computer? Do they need a monitor? Do they need a mobile phone? Right? That mobile phone was a dynamic field that said, if I select the Boolean, then the drop-down list of mobile phones showed up. right? And we're digging deep into the covers to be able to show you, here's the expression level that says that kind of functionality that's there is if that mobile phone required is equal to true, make this visible, and then select a list of the phones that we can go through and do. Now, if it's something like a location or a department code or something like that that we're selecting from, we can reference something on the back end so that we don't have to manually add every one of those things in every time we do a request offering. But it is all very drag and drop, very configurable here. If I wanted to add a new drop down, find it over here from the form designer, drop it in here, and I have a new form selection that I would be able to do. And then you see, moving over to the workflow that this request offering is going to be coming through. This is where those 4 tasks came from: operations, facilities, IT tasks. Why? If I wanted to add a couple more tasks, I would drag those in and I would link those up associated with that, and I can come in here and start to see, right, some of those details along those lines. I could go in here and say, this is the AD setup. I'm not going to go through and type that, but AD setup, and as soon as the AD setup is done, we can get to the VPN setup. What if I had to get an approval before I was jumping into that? Here's what that approval block looks like. Who's the approver? Is it a group? Is it a specific user? Is it a user that is selected as part of the request offering? Is it a user related to the person submitting that request offering? All of those kind of things you can select as part of that approval block. And then I want to point out the ability to come in here and run connections out to third-party tools. So we have a full API being able to go both REST and SOAP in and out, so that you would be able to go through and make connections out to third-party tools to be able to go through and fulfill these request offerings. And we also have our Ivanti automation block, and the automation block gets us into runbooks, right? So we can start doing, runbooks to build things and do, automatically provision virtual machines, automatically create Active Directory accounts for people, automatically set up their mailboxes, all of those kind of things that can be done with our automation engine that can come with the platform, right? Now, and then also we have who this is published to. So who can see this request offering, right? I don't want to publish the request to get access to the finance system to all employees in the organization. No one out of finance needs to see that, right? As you're kind of going through from that, or everyone that wants to get CRM access. Well, not every person in the organization needs to be able to see the CRM request that would be there. So you can go through and control a lot of that kind of configuration on here. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you as we're working through this, again, we've talked about a asset view. We've talked about an enterprise service management view where we have things like a facilities administrator. And as a facilities administrator, I'm looking at work orders and preventative maintenance, and I'm looking at facilities assets and different things along those lines as well, right? And if I were to say switch over to an human resources role, I'm looking at HR cases and HR requests and employee team and knowledge specifically around HR. Well, that brings me, how are we separating all of that kind of stuff? Well, hot off the presses on this most recent version now is we have the ability not to have just this traditional self-service portal that has, IT and HR and facilities kind of combined, but now we have the ability to have this new enterprise self-service portal that allows us to come through and look at, I want IT services, I want HR services, I want facilities services, and I would be able to go through and select any of those kind of things. So if I'm wanting to come in here and look at HR services that are there, it brings me in. I would be able to raise a case. I would be able to go through and look at that. If I submit an HR request, it's going to filter down to only those things that are HR within the catalog as we're working through from that kind of perspective. So you have that. You can also switch back and forth. So if I were to say, oops, I really wanted to go into facilities, now it would take me to the facilities portal, and I would be able to go through and pull that. And that's going to be specific by role. So maybe there's people who wouldn't have access to the HR portal, or maybe there would be people who wouldn't have access to the facilities portal. You can manage all of that kind of stuff. So this is, the new enterprise service management portal that gives you all the different capabilities that are there. Okay, Mr. Hodzik, I'm going to pause here to see if we have any questions.
We have several of them. Can you create different SLAs for different vendors or categories back on the incident?
Yes, you can. Yep, you can have SLAs, and a much longer conversation that I want to go through in this webinar, but I haven't had a customer stump us on SLAs to this point, right? So we have SLAs, underpinning contracts. We can have service level targets that can be by category, by department, by vendor, all of that kind of stuff.
Do you have to pay a license for the approvers?
No, we are not licensed by approvers. We are licensed only by Analyst, and we support both named licenses and concurrent licenses on an Analyst perspective.
Is this cloud or on-premise?
It is both, right? I would highly recommend customers move to cloud. Cloud is where the innovation is. Cloud is where all the different things are. Upgrades are done automatically for cloud customers. Ivanti is on the hook for those upgrades, not the customer. So you can go through and do that. If you're cloud averse, you can't do it for security reasons or any other points, then we do have an on-premise option.
How did you populate the data in that asset management system?
Okay, so we're going to have discovery. It's going to come through. There's a holistic way that we need to go through and have the discovery configuration associated with that, right? So we're going to have to get information from maybe an Ivanti endpoint manager, maybe a Microsoft SCCM, maybe a purchasing database that we have some of this kind of data. Spreadsheets is going to have some of it. Discovery components are going to feed more information to it. It has to be a holistic view to be able to get all of the different asset and all of the data around that.
Okay, that's it for now. We've got 14 minutes left, so what else do we want to cover?
Okay, I want to go and start talking about change management. All right, so as we go through and look at change management, we can come through and see we're going to create a new change. And let's walk through a couple of different things along this line. Now, remember that this is an ITIL-based platform, so it's out of the box going to focus on those ITIL best practices. There's going to be some things that a lot of customers either don't want out of that ITIL best practice, or I call myself an ITIL pragmatist, right? Let's apply ITIL where it works. Let's adapt and adjust where it doesn't work to those kind of things. And one of those things you'll notice here on this change, in the details, I'm going to have summary description. And a lot of times I see customers come in here and say, well, wait a minute, where's the rollback strategy? Where's the rollout strategy? Where's the testing strategy? I need to see all of that in the change. Well, according to ITIL, all of that kind of stuff is in here when we link over to a release. So if I were to come in here and look at a release, I would be able to go through and say, here's my domain controller virtualization release with things like build and testing plans and rollout plans and backup plans and all of that kind of stuff in here in the release structure associated with that. I will say, however, a lot of my customers aren't ready for that. They don't want to get to that full release structure. They just want to add a couple of fields like rollback strategy, testing strategy, and we can totally do that, and we can work through, and I've done that for probably the majority of our customers around change management. So let's do an ERP upgrade, and we can start to see some of the details of our upgrade. It helps to type it correctly, right? We can come in here, let's call it a significant upgrade. If we selected major, it would actually go through 2 levels of approvals. I'm just going to do 1 level of approval here. And let's do a couple of other things. Let's get a sponsor. Let's get a team. I will be the owner on this. And then we can go through and work on the next different pieces along these lines, right? So we have some base information. The next thing we have is a risk calculator. That risk calculator lets us go through and determine what the risk score is going to be based upon this. Now, the questions are irrelevant because you will define those questions as, you know, as a customer, you'll decide what's important to ask people to go through and fill out as part of their risk scores. I have selected the riskiest answer to every one of these, right? And if I go ahead and save that, that can start driving different levels of approval. It could start driving different requirements that are needed to be added in order for it to be able to move into, you know, a scheduled status. All of those kind of things could be there as we come to this, right? So that risk score is going to be populated right into here. And then we're going to start linking some assets into this. Well, as we come through and look at this, let's group by here and let's go to the enterprise application. The first thing that we're going to want to look at is adding that ERP application. Well, as we go to that ERP application, we might want to go find more information about what makes up that ERP application so that we can get all of those servers added to the change, maybe any additional pieces that are there. So you'll notice on this ERP application, we have, things like all of the change history, the maintenance window, the lockout window, all of those kind of things would be here. But you'll also notice we have a service delivery map. Now, these are going to be built by you, right, as part of that component that you would go through and work with and be able to have this populated into the data. You manage all of that kind of configuration into this. But you would then see from an ERP application, I have 2 different servers and a business service that are all affected by this, right? And if I'm going to come in here and say, we're going to actually do an upgrade on this, I would be able to go through and see what's an outage so that I could start to add that kind of information in and kind of manage all of that from here. So if we come back to this and we say, yes, let's also add in a couple of other things. We need to link in that enterprise application, or that enterprise service that we were looking at. So let's go to our services and we will see that enterprise applications service that's here. We add that in. Now you'll notice it didn't pop up as an asset because it's a unique record within the CMDB. It actually added it as a service, right? Because it's going to drive a whole bunch of different things associated with that. Let's link in a couple of more assets. We'll again group this and we'll come in here to our computers. Let's jump to, I think they're in the next batch here, ERP Server 1 and 2. There we go. So we'll select those 2 servers. It adds them into that change, right? And now we can go through and start looking at what are we going to do from a schedule? What do we want to look at this change from here? Now you'll notice as I go through and select this, it's going to have maintenance windows. It's going to have, lockout windows when we can do things, when we can't do things along those lines. Well, let's go ahead and select this time frame. We'll do that. Oh, I've selected over top of a lockout window. It won't let me do that. Will let me. It'll just warn me to go through and do that. So let's go ahead and change that. Let's make our team work on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. I'm sure that will make them very happy. So we're going to go through and do that upgrade. You'll then notice that schedule that we just put in there is going to populate back here into the start and end date. And then all I need to do is send it out for an approval. When I send it out for an approval, it's going to say we need to have a vote and a CAB meeting date that we need to go through. So let's say if we're going to do this next week, we better go through and have the vote and the CAB approval tomorrow along those lines as we do this. So we can then come through, save that information into this, and it will move in from approval, and you'll see here all of the approvals and then the approval vote tracking along those lines. Now, for the sake of it, this is the same approval structure as we just saw earlier. So I'm going to go very fast through this, but you'll see actually in my items, in my approvals, there's a new approval for a change associated with that. And you can go through and manage all of the different pieces associated with those different approvals and all the work along those lines. So you can go through and approve those, manage that. I can come in here and just say, as an administrator, I'm going to override this approval so that we can get things moving on past there. It moves into a scheduled status at that point. We can then come through, start adding tasks to different teams. If we wanted to have release, we could link it to release. We can manage all of the different pieces along those lines. And then as we come through and manage the different pieces in there, we can get it into a final state of the different pieces along those lines. And then we can move to a implemented status where we can do a post-implementation review around how did we do, what do we need to make sure that we don't do again, was there any actual problems, actual failures, any of those kind of things along those lines. And I can select that all from here associated with that, right? And so now then we could go ahead and close that change. So any questions for the change module that's there?
Yeah, we got a question here, and we're almost out of time, but this seems a little complicated. Can we make a more simplified version of it?
Yes. Funny enough, most of my customers, again, that's why I say this is all built on ITIL. We want to, bring this down, simplify, all of those kind of things with the change management for a lot of our customers. Yes, we have customers that need all of this and need, 3 levels of approval for business owners and that kind of stuff for change, but a lot of other customers just don't want to go to that and don't need to go to that for their organization, and we can work with you to simplify it and bring it down to your requirements for sure.
Okay. So there was another question kind of asking about the implementation. All this looks great, but how realistic is it to actually implement this in organizations? What's your implementation methodology?
So implementations are going to range depending on the modules that you want to do, how you want to phase the different components associated with that. Implementations as fast as a very basic incident management in a couple to 3 weeks to, a full enterprise rollout for a big organization that wants, 100 request offerings and all this kind of stuff into, 6-month kind of time frames of implementation. It just kind of depends on what you're looking for out of the different components from that perspective. So we have a workshop, we go through methodology of implementation, you go through testing, validation, and then a go live to be able to kind of get that through.
Okay, that's all our questions today. So, and we're just coming up on time here. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. And as you can see, we're going to post this recording on YouTube. It should be up there within 24 hours. And if you want a personalized demo, please let us know. We'd love to give you a more very specific to your use cases and your business drivers. We'd love to do that. So just contact your account executive, or you can see there's an email information there as well.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.